Welcome to the Soulish Podcast. My name is Whitney Apke and I am your host. On the Soulish Podcast, we talk about the soul journey, the body-soul-spirit connection, everything really that has to do with this life and what this life is and our journey really, like through awakening, spiritual growth, personal development, all of that. And I have guests that are like such a range of whether it's like body workers, thought leaders, truth seekers, people that are out there in the world and putting good things out into the world and are trying to help people, awaken or heal. And so I have astrologers, past life regressionists, body workers, like people like acupuncturists, herbal medicine, chiropractor. I have everything, relationship coaches. We have everything on this podcast. It's so fun. Today's guest is an amazing person. I actually have been like waiting for this day. He has an Instagram called Woke AF, and his Instagram is hilarious. It is amazing. His meme game is on point. And he is just such an amazing person with what I've been able to even get to know. He's from New Zealand. I wish he lived over here in the States so we could hang. He is just an amazing, amazing, amazing person. I cannot say it enough. And he has such a big heart to help humanity, to help raise awareness, raise the level of consciousness, and to help people kind of wake up to truth or to be inspired to dig deeper within themselves. And so I'm really excited for this conversation today because it's really just that. It's really just what he puts out into the world. And we're going to kind of shoot the shit, but on really awesome spiritual topics and like life stuff. And so his Instagram is all down below in the show notes. He's amazing. I'm so excited. So I'm going to cut this intro and we're going to get right into the conversation with Josh Davies. Hello, Soulish Tribe. So I know that I'm not alone and always feeling thirsty. Even though I hydrate throughout the day, I'm always feeling that I need more water, especially after those cycling classes. My friends James and Mark over at Zaka have the perfect solution. Zaka's Hydration and Liver Aid is the #1 recovery and hydration solution for working out, jet lag, or drinking, maybe just a little too much. Zaka uses herbs such as Japanese raisin as well as other natural and fermented ingredients that are safe and without artificial flavors. Zaka is unique because it doesn't just replenish what your body needs, but also supports your body's natural ability to recover. It's 2 very, very yummy and very chewable tablets that you can put under your tongue or chew up and swallow. Go to Zaka.com, that's ZACA.com, and use promo code SOULISH15 to get 15% off of your order. I'm super excited for our conversation, and I know like we've been chatting a lot, so it's been like, I love your meme game, and your GIF game. You have GIF game and meme game like hardcore.
You're not the first person to say that. I appreciate that.
You get that a lot.
Practicing my GIF game, yeah.
You do. You have really awesome GIF game, really good meme game. I have to say, like, I'm not that good. That's not my wheelhouse.
What do the comedians say? That you have to have a very traumatic childhood to be funny. So maybe that's it.
Oh. In a lot of ways, that's like not funny to say. It's like, oh, that like gets you.
Yeah, you're like, oh, am I funny? Oh, why am I funny now? Anyway.
I mean, it's true. I think because you learn to cope, right? Like in the end, it's just learning to cope, and you've had a really rough time at learning how to cope.
Yeah, I think we've all had a rough childhood in some way or another. I just had someone that was very funny in my life, so I think it rubbed off on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my family, the Apke family, we serve sarcasm with every meal. It's like we're all hilarious. I'm the least funny, in my personal opinion, out of my whole family, but I think I do have like at least a good appreciation for humor, you know?
Yeah.
So, I think one of the posts that you posted, which I'm trying to even remember, like what was the first post I ever saw of yours that I reposted because I had to because it was that good.
Is it the meme with Millhouse?
Probably.
It's
Yes.
it was because I grew up watching The Simpsons, and like, to be honest, I still do, like, every day. And in the in this episode, he enters his name into the computer game system, and it comes up and says, "Welcome, Thrill House," right? And I looked at that, I was like, well, this is like what we are, right? We're in a video game right now. That's the way I can see it.
Hmm.
And our higher selves is basically the person who is entering all the information, and Thrill House is there just experiencing it, none the wiser. But the meme was when you finally realize that you're your higher self playing the video game, just
Hmm.
that realization that comes.
Yeah. Which I think is so it's such a good picture of what it would feel like, because I don't even know if I've had that like realization, like truly like deep down like resonating of like I am my higher self, or I can channel my higher self, or I am connected in that way. Like we can think we are, but I don't know if that truth has actually really sunk in, because I feel like that would change everything.
That's exciting because that's
You
coming.
know?
That's
Yeah.
gonna absolutely. And
Like if
you're
I'm
right.
just being honest, you know, it's
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
we
I
like to
think I'm
spout that we've arrived, but I'm pretty sure I haven't arrived.
we're still the character, but we're having this like God complex. I'm like, oh, hang on, it might be true.
Hmm.
Maybe it's true. And then what I did was I sort of consumed so much information over the past couple of years, and probably jumping ahead a bit here, but that's sort of what I'm learning and have been learning over the past few months, is to really just integrate that information.
Hmm.
And it's like oh, I don't need to know these things. They just are.
Ooh, that's
And I
good,
think
Josh.
I had this thing that with that, when I made that meme, I think what had happened was I experienced this thing where I just like, I did this meditation, and I envisioned myself just dropping into this body, right? So I was just in a meditative state, and I was like, right, boom, now I'm here. I'm in the matrix, just like a video game character dropping in, like in Fortnite, dropping into the island, you're like, boom, you're here. Okay, what would I do? What do I actually want to do if I erased all of the Josh stuff, all of the stuff that everybody tells me I am, that, all that stuff? What would I actually want to do? What is my intuition telling me? Because that's the connection.
Mm.
Intuition. It's always been there too. It's just very, very subtle.
Hmm. And there's a lot of things that we choose to be distracted by, and that happens to us that we are distracted by, or like even water. I mean, I just learned, I think a year ago, about how nasty our water is over here. I don't know where, if it's as gross in New Zealand,
Probably.
but probably.
They don't tell us the truth a lot of the time. So, but
Right.
yeah, you're
But
right.
you know, like even that, like impacting your pineal gland, and then that impacting just even your receptor of information, I just was like, oh my God, like that's nuts. I would have never known that. I've been drinking, purified water all my life, I think, like not distilled, or, and
Mm,
everyone believes their water's the right water to drink. But I think it's just amazing to learn like all the different things that we consume, literally
yeah,
like physically, as well as our mental diet, our emotional diet, like so many things that um I guess hinder our ability to connect with ourselves, even, not even God, source, universe, whatever that is. So it's
yeah,
really interesting, that journey of like self-discovering, and then discovering what works for you and what helps you to connect to your intuition,
absolutely.
because
I
that's
think
everything.
it is absolutely, and that's the key, is for me anyway, is finding what works for you. Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? I mean, everybody's got their own things, and I know I've seen so many different ways to do X, Y, Z, and then you jump over here, and it's like, oh, don't do that. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be doing this the whole time. There's a
Hmm.
lot of contradicting stuff out there, but there's always a middle ground with everything, and it's in every single industry or whatever you want to call it. It's all over the place, right?
Yeah.
With the water thing, that's interesting, because I've thought about that and contemplated that before, and I realized that the third eye, the pineal gland, right? It's like a receiver, but I also realized that that's only the physical aspect. So
Yes.
what that could be doing, if you are calcifying or whatever it is,
Hmm.
it could be inhibiting the connection, but it's never going to sever it completely, because it's a metaphysical thing. And the
Yeah.
connection is through the mind, And I think if your pineal gland isn't being more activated in things, you are more susceptible to channeling or whatever it may be. And it's probably a good thing to sort of clear that if you can. But I don't think, because a lot of people get on the thing of, oh, it's calcified, now I'm screwed.
Right.
Now I'll never connect. And that's
Yeah.
just that you got to, and the realization would help to come that, oh, I'm actually stopping that connection by thinking that.
Hmm. Yeah. Because we're first spirit. Like we're
Absolutely.
first spirit, and then this is just the vessel, the vehicle that we're experiencing this incarnation in. And so to identify so much or put so much importance on the body, I think can mess us up. I totally agree with that because I mean, and that's like part of, I feel like, what the world, at least like media, social media, it's all about like what you look like, smell like, what your hair is, like for women anyway.
I don't have to worry
Like,
about
yeah,
that.
you're good. But like,
Okay,
makeup, like,
beard days.
there you go. It's the beard game for you. I don't have that. I don't have that identification. um, but yeah, like I think it's just really interesting that the majority focus is on our body. And even right now with like health and wellness, like you not being having COVID, it's like we're still identifying with the body. The body is the main topic or subject of focus, but there's so much more than just the body. And there's like that balance of like honoring your body. Like both you and I this past week got like under the weather, you know?
Mm.
And it was a good like little like snooze. At least for me it was like snooze.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
need to rest.
I didn't
And
though. Anyway,
you
that's not.
didn't. You were like working out. I was like, dude, you're like sweating it out. Like I can't even do that. I'm breaking out in hives over here. That's my current state of being, which is crazy. But yeah, I think it's just really interesting. So it's all that to say, like with identification, I think that's been like a subject that I've even had with friends where it's like the topic that all you can think about, all you can talk about is relationships, dating, getting back out there, whatever, after a relationship, or you're sulking, and wrapped up in your past relationship that you can't get over, or it's like what's happening to you physically, what your physical body looks like, what it, your functionality, being able to move and whatever. I just feel like there's a lot of I guess, focus in on the body, but that actually isn't like our main, I guess, I don't even know what you would call it, like main
Yeah,
substance, like what we are made of, our matter, is spirit, it's soul.
it is. It's like a reflection. It's like the perfect reflection. Like everything in the universe is a reflection of the metaphysical aspect.
Yeah.
But it's distorted through because it has to go through the Fibonacci sequence, if you like, that kind of thing. It needs to be. It can't be perfect, and it's always unique.
Mm-hmm.
But we have been conditioned to focus on the body so much, whether it's by design or not, is it's another conversation, right? But it's
Right.
just it is that way because there's evidence of that. It's
Mm-hmm.
easy to relate to that. When we start talking about the minds, shit starts getting crazy, right? We've had, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, only 30 years ago, I think they were still doing shock, well, maybe not shock therapy, but they were
Yeah.
still calling people who heard voices schizophrenic. Come on, everybody hears voices. We have our internal dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
People were too scared to say anything for fear of consequence, I think. And I
Yeah.
think that really ripples out and it creates these ripple effects where everyone is subconsciously scared of talking about that because their family members who are still in that generation might think they're crazy.
Yeah.
But it's like realizing that none of that matters is liberating.
It's so liberating, Josh.
It really
It's
is.
so liberating. It's like,
None of it
and
matters.
yeah, why am I wasting time? Why am I wasting energy? Like even having this conversation with someone else about something to identify with this life in general, because this
Yeah,
life is temporary and it's meant to be just an experience, like we're meant to grow and develop and heal, sure, yeah, but like it's meant to be experienced,
it's meant to be fun too.
meant to
It's
be
not all about
fun.
shadow work. It's not all about healing. Like that
Right.
stuff is important, don't get me wrong, but that can be done and moved on from. If you're doing the shadow work correctly, it's going
Right.
to release that energy, right? And then you're going to be
Yes.
able to tackle the next thing without the distortion of that past trauma. And it
Yes.
opens up a whole new sort of dimension of reality for you.
Like what I'm hearing you say is that we should always be becoming more free. Like there
100%.
should be a progression.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best way that you can quantify or at least measure your spiritual growth is by the amount of freedom that you feel at any moment.
That's
Because
so huge.
ultimately all we are doing is becoming the higher version of ourselves. Like whether we realize it or not, we're always going to get there. As the law of one says, we are
Hmm.
already that, looking back, helping our current incarnation. So, and technically in a simultaneous reality, which is outside in time space, right? There's no linear time, it's all happening all at once. So if that's the case, then that means we are already that. So all we're doing is just, we're not walking towards that, we're literally pulling that into us. It's like
Hmm.
pulling it in. But when I say pulling it in, I mean pulling it in from the inside out,
Hmm. Hmm.
through whatever this connection is, out into our reality, because this is sort of the projection of our internal dialogue or our internal frame of reference or state of being.
Hmm.
That's the way
Hmm.
I look at it.
That's so cool. What is your perspective on like this world being an illusion? Like everything we experience being an illusion?
So, like the world or the reality itself, like the matrix or itself, because both of
I
them to me
know.
illusory.
Yeah, I guess
One's of the mind, one's of the senses.
it's true. I think we can start with like this world, like this tangible world, right? Like do you feel like that's technically an illusion? It's fake. It's just a mirror of everything that we're projecting. When you said projection, that's what came up for me and I was like, I wonder what he thinks about that.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I contemplated it a lot because
Yeah.
when I first hear the terms illusion, I'm like, oh, does that mean it's fake? Does that mean it doesn't exist?
When we hear illusion, we think fake automatically, but it could just be
Absolutely.
that it's not constant.
Yeah, and it's like for me, we're not seeing. I mean, if you say like a desk, we're not seeing the way a desk is. We're seeing it from our perspective, and our perspective is illusory because there's more perspectives than that. Like if you were
Mhm.
to look at a desk from an atom's perspective, it looks like a universe. There is no desk. So which perspective is correct? Both of them, right? So that way we're projecting our perspective onto said desk, and we're getting back an illusion of what we think a desk should be. That makes sense.
Mhm.
And if we're talking about like everything else, I mean that sort of, if we were to zoom out, say like from Jupiter's perspective, for example, something a bit closer to home, if it's looking at Earth, I mean it's not seeing Earth as we see it, right? It's seeing it like an atom size or an apple size, I think it is.
Mhm.
And we're seeing this giant gas thing. But if we were looking at Jupiter from Jupiter's perspective, I think it would look a lot different.
Yeah.
It's
That's
like the
really good.
individual, like
Mhm.
depending on the predetermined biases and conceptions and things of what things should look like, we project that onto something, creating an illusion. And if we go to like a person, the way we do this is I'll give like an example. So let's say you're going to meet someone that you've never met before, right? And your friend tells you a couple of things about this person. Now, at this stage in the story, we don't know if it's true or not, right? And the things that your friend has said to you, when you meet this person, there's going to be this distortion of that person being that way. But ultimately, afterwards, you could find out that that person never did that. Your friend was mistaken, and that whole experience was an illusory one
That's
because
so
it
good. That's
wasn't,
such a fantastic example because that's already happened so many times in my own life, you know?
right?
Like
And it
everyone
happens
can
to
relate to
us all
that.
the time. It
Yeah.
happens to us. That's what people project onto us. So because one of the biggest things that I had to overcome through my journey, which is obviously an infinite one, but so far, is that I gave a shit about what people thought about me. Like so much though, so much. It was like it created the very character that I developed over my like teenage years and early 20s and that, right? I gave a shit. and it made me do things, and I appreciate it, right? I'm not looking back in a negative lens at all, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you, right?
Right.
So that I appreciate it, and it's provided me so much catalyst. But realizing that all of those perspectives were all mine, the ones that I thought people thought about me, I was creating this false reality that I was living in on a daily basis. And I wasn't consciously choosing it. It was just automatically happening from the moment I woke up in the morning. It's like, I'm awake. This is great. I'm back here. Boom. Oh, I'm shit. Like, oh my God, this person hates me. Oh my God, they cheated on me. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. My mom thinks I'm a failure. Just like examples, right? Because I don't think she ever did. She's actually really cool. But
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. And we create this illusory world out of something that we think really have a we really have a grasp on it, but it's all just so it's like sand through the hands. As soon as it's like it's gone,
Yeah.
once you see it for what it is.
Yeah. And once you begin to let go, it really falls through your fingers. It doesn't
Absolutely.
have anything to stand on.
That's it. It doesn't, because
Like
it's
you're the
it's
one holding it up.
you.
Yeah.
Exactly. It needs you to exist. And that I think that there we've got to the very definition of my illusion, is that if it needs me to exist, it's an illusion. If it needs to go through my lens first, it's going to go through all of my biases, and it's going to become an illusion.
Yeah.
Whereas the desk can just be a desk without me looking at it, but it can be in, like, if you look into quantum physics, so many different states at once. Time, space means nothing in the quantum field. So the very things that the disk is made up of are in all sorts of different states, all sorts of dimensions, things that we couldn't even imagine with the human
Mm-hmm.
mind.
Mm-hmm. Which is insane. I think this kind of brings me to one of your posts about channeling. And
Mm.
I remember I sent this to you and I was like, can we talk about this? And you're
I
like,
can sleep.
sure.
It probably, because I'm more than happy to talk about it. So it's going to be off the cuff. So let's go.
Yeah. But I like, and you're like, of course, no, yeah, of course. You posted, this was one of your written ones. You said it's important to remember that any information, whether it be from channeling, spiritual teachers, or even in general conversation, is presented through the distortions of the communicator relaying the information. This is where discernment can allow us to take from the information that which resonates with us and discard the rest. And I thought this was so huge because, there's so many people out there. Even like Law of One, like I giggle a little bit because my brother, as you know, is like known as like one of the Law of One teachers. He does
Oh,
not channel raw. He's literally just, and I don't know if anyone has ever even said that because I think he makes it pretty obvious that he's literally just taking from the teachings and just breaking it down. But there's so
yeah.
many people that you can find on YouTube and they have like, a cloth or a pillow over their head and they're channeling raw, they're like channeling it raw again and basically just saying the same things, that the Law of One already says, but they're like, doing it in their own way. And I'm like all for people getting in with like, like totally getting in it and like putting their self out there. Like I'm all about that, but sometimes it really frustrates me when I feel like something is not it's not true, it's not authentic. But then it makes me ask that question, well, how do I know that the people who originally channeled raw are true and authentic? Like why am I differentiating between just because these guys came after, and there's a bunch of like, different people, but you could say like Abraham Hicks is full of shit. Bashar is full of shit. Law of One is full of shit. A pastor speaking in front of a congregation is full of shit. I mean, there's like so much of that, right? But I loved what you said about discernment. And it's about like having your own inner guidance system, your intuition, your discernment, and taking from what you're hearing what actually resonates and discarding the rest. Because the things that people in the spiritual community wrestle with most are the things that don't resonate, that they're
Mhm.
having a hard time swallowing, digesting, integrating. And so they wrestle with it and they're like, this, I have to make this true for me. Because if this is what it says, but I don't resonate, so then I'm in the wrong, and ego steps in, right? And we get all of that. So all this to say, so I can shut up and you can say what you're gonna say.
Oh, this is
Um,
great.
I think it's like fascinating to me, this journey of basically experiencing people share from ETs. And I think we're going to get this more and more and more because we're
Mhm.
becoming more and more aware of like extraterrestrials or other beings outside of Earth, and the fact that, aliens live among us and whatever, UFOs. So I feel like we're going to get more of this in the coming years. It's going to become a popular thing if it's not already popular.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate this, and how do we walk this out? And I thought that post was like maybe one of the best, like, here's what you do, you know,
Yeah.
discernment. And I
I
wanted to ask you like what your thoughts are, and what what brought you to say that? What brought you to post about that? Because I think that's fascinating that you even mentioned it.
It's funny because we're talking about channeling, and like I hear that message and I know that I said it, and but I also don't take credit for it because it was coming from somewhere else.
Hmm.
It's definitely a lot of my posts, those ones in particular, I try and write them as raw as possible as well. So there's no real thought process behind it. It's just get this information to people because I know who needs to hear it's going to hear it, right?
Right,
And
right.
that's pretty much the reason I started my page in the first place was that.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what you're saying, I couldn't agree with you more. And I look at it, I guess, on another level as well, where these things where people are wrestling with the fact, is Bashar full of shit? Is Sam the Illusionist full of shit? Is Alan Watts, was he just like really high all the time? Like things
Yeah.
like that, you know?
Love me some Alan Watts.
That's, oh, wow, we talk about it for hours. The thing to take away from that part before we get into the discernment part is that these things can be very, so when we're wrestling, when these the people in the spiritual community, they're wrestling with these things, this can be a beneficial process.
Hmm.
So I don't like taking that away from people because I
Yeah.
realize that you become the person that's like your brother said one thing, which it's like one of these things that really resonates with me. The best spiritual teacher or guru is always going to tell you that you never needed them
Yes.
because
Yep.
everything is already there.
Yep. It's
All the
already in you.
spiritual guide can do is show you perhaps a different way,
Yeah.
right? And they're always going to point out your ignorance of the truth, which is that you're infinite and stuff like that. There's never going to be a narrative or a story unless it's designed to get you back to that place of yourself, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, and you're right, it's going to get more popular. It already is. There's a lot more coming out. There's a lot more Law of One stuff. And with like Carla and Jim and that who did the channeling, it's still through their distortions.
Yes.
Ra is like channeling through a very narrow band, and Carla is in a trance. So her, as far as she's aware, there's nothing that she's sort of contributing to it, but it's still using her mind complex. It's still
Yes.
using her vocabulary, right? There
Yes.
still needs, because if you look at the questions and the stuff, they're written sort of in the same way. And I started questioning. I was like, well, if the questions are written in the same way that Ra's responding, does that not just mean they've written this whole book? And then I thought, well, if they have written the whole book, fuck, that's impressive, because this is like a metaphysical encyclopedia, you know.
Yeah.
Of yourself, they've written this. Kudos to you. You're onto something, right? So if you want to look at it as fiction, you can, but it's there's a lot of really good information in there. So when I come to this is discernment, right? So discernment is our biggest, it's our greatest tool, in my opinion, because if something's true. When the spiritual truth is spoken, you can feel it. It's
Yes.
a resonation. And when these resonations occur and keep occurring, they actually form like a crystallization, and they get so ingrained into you that it's so hard. I mean, you can look at it and never ever say it wasn't true because you just know. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And all of these other things, when I say discard the rest, I literally mean that because it's nonsense. And it's not, all it's going to do is distort this thing. It's going to open up a question. Oh, but what if? Oh, but Bashar said this. This doesn't resonate with this, doesn't line up with this. I like Bashar. I follow him. I need to get into, I need to think like he does. It's like, I'm sure if you asked him, he would tell you, hopefully, that what I'm saying, take from it what resonates with you. Everything else, maybe the message wasn't meant for you. It's meant for somebody else who is struggling with a particular thing that needs to hear this to get to where you're currently at, because
Mm-hmm.
they're speaking to so many different people.
Mm-hmm.
But discernment came to me through the law of one, actually. They talk about it a lot. Ra talks about it a lot. The rest of them, I mean, they're still channeling today. They're channeling through Quo and all of these other entities as well, right? It hasn't stopped. It's never stopped. They're still doing it. And there's a lot of information there. And they always, like Quo usually opens up with, please take away from my brother what resonates with you and do not worry about the rest. It's like the opening statement. And it's just, if you can really apply that, not just to your spiritual life, everywhere,
Yeah.
if everybody could put in some discernment with what's going on around the world right now, we wouldn't be in this position. So I think it's a lost art. I really do.
Yeah, we're told, taught, conditioned, programmed to not trust ourselves, not trust our discernment, our intuition. So, unless you grew up in a really unique household where they were like, trust yourself, as a kid, trust what you know is right is what is right. No, it's usually you're told. At least for me, I grew up Christian. Did you grow up religious? I think we talked about this.
Yeah, we did. We touched on it. I didn't. So I grew up in a, well, my nan, bless her soul, she's the most amazing person. She grew up Roman Catholic. So I had that on that side.
Ah,
And then I had my pop, who is he was just a unique character, and he was atheist, and he just, if I can't fucking see it, doesn't exist. All right.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
I had that as well. So I had the between the two. But they let me live my life the way I wanted to. So I, went through and did things. Nothing was ever forced upon me in any way, which was quite good, I think. Well, it was, but I never really, I always looked at God as this guy in the clouds with his beard, looking down, judging everybody, right? It was just
Mm-hmm.
this character or caricature that was sort of created. And New Zealand as a whole is not that religious. So there's also that. So yeah, I guess I just grew up thinking that I was this little thing in this big universe, that there was nothing else after this. I didn't question it. But I was always very fascinated with the Egyptians and the stars and things like that. So there was always that in the back of my mind. And looking back right now, I just remember some times where I was just looking at the stars and I just felt something. And I was like, whoa, what the fuck's that? Because I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's some weird stuff. What is this? So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's very interesting to look back at that time of my life because I just had so much freedom in that respect.
Mm-hmm. To kind of like whatever you end up thinking about the universe or earth or you or your life and the meaning of life, like what drove you to spirituality? How did you end up like what you are right now?
So usually these things like a big, is a wake up call. You get slapped in the face by reality, right? You lose someone or you go through breakups or whatever it might be. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of had a lot of things all at once. And, I was in a real bad space, right? I was in a job that I hated. I
Mm.
was getting paid well, but there's all sorts of things that sort of fed into that. My relationship was breaking down. I lost someone as well. And all of these things just, it's like a semi truck just smashed me. And I was like, this can't be it. This can't be everything that I'm supposed to do here. This can't just be life.
Right.
And then I went through like a bout of just like even more severe depression. And then I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I
Mm.
read that book and it changed everything.
Yep.
Everything.
That book has changed, I feel like so many lives. That book was so yeah, it's man. I don't even have words.
Started to realize that, oh my God, because I was so heavily identifying with the thoughts, right? To even hear the concept that your thoughts aren't, I mean, I've heard it before and people say, oh, yeah, change your thoughts. I was like, what do you mean change your thoughts? I can't do that. right?
Mhm. Mhm.
To be introduced to the concept of my thoughts not actually being like just being on this projector, you know, like me being something else which is behind this, and my thoughts need me even to exist.
Yep.
They can't exist on their own. You know, those kind of questions, and the way my mind works, I've always been very technical, and I've always been very, I want to know how shit works,
I can
you know?
totally tell that.
So it started my journey into really looking into these concepts that Eckhart was talking about. And of course, he talks about A Course in Miracles as well. So that I've
Mhm.
obviously opened those doors. So I looked into that, and then it just tumbled on from there. And that would have
Wow.
been 2019 that that happened to me. I don't know
Wow.
what time before that time. It's like another person was existing. You know, I look at that person with love, and but just as this different person, it was just I didn't even know what they were doing.
Mhm. They were living life, you know?
Giving me all the catalysts and lessons that I needed now to look back on and learn.
Yeah.
It's
That's
like
so
a
cool.
sponge bringing in the water, right? You've got to, and
Mhm.
to squeeze it out again, you've got to have it there and then learn
Yep.
from it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's so cool. What a journey. Because now what you're doing is like just even having your Instagram. I mean, you have like thousands of followers. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Awesome.
pretty cool.
I got some awesome followers. I really do. Really,
Yeah.
really people. Yeah.
It's so cool. Like a Kiwi. Is that what you call New Zealanders?
Yeah.
Kiwis?
Kiwi.
A Kiwi making it happen on
Yeah,
Instagram.
right. Making it happen. Little
I
old New
love it.
Zealand down here in the bottom of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. New Zealand is on my bucket list. I need to go.
Me
It
too.
would be
It's a
so cool.
beautiful place.
Yeah.
It's right. It's just so. I mean, yeah, you'll find out. It's clean. It's friendly. Everybody here is pretty friendly. You know,
Mhm.
um, beautiful beaches. The South Island's amazing. It's like I don't know. You probably put Alaska and Canada into one, and like but it's so easily accessible to get to and stuff. You know, it's amazing.
Ugh.
I only went there for the first time. It's August now. 2 years ago to this day, probably I was in the South Island for the first time. I'd never been there for what? How am I? I'm like 37 years old, right? And I hadn't even been there. It was literally just the island down from me. And I went last year, and it was a beautiful experience. I went on my own. I got a camper van. I drove around. There was
Oh my
nobody there.
gosh.
We were in like a lockdown, right? In the
Yeah.
North Island, I just escaped it. I don't know if I should talk about this because the FBI might come, but um, it was just a beautiful experience. It was just so pristine. The first time I'd ever seen it, and I was just blown away.
Wow. Isn't
Beautiful
that
guy,
crazy when it's like I live here, I have not been down here, and like
right?
how easy is that? Yeah.
I know. Yeah,
Life changing. Yeah. I think
yeah,
traveling is one of those too, because just even getting outside of your normal environment
yeah,
is something just even physically, like it helps you, I think, in so many ways move forward or kind of be open. Um,
yeah.
so that's what I've seen in my personal experience. Like I used to live in California. That's where I was born and raised. Now I
Whew.
live in Colorado. Yes. Whew is right. And so I feel like I escaped like before. I mean, not really, because yeah, everything was kind of going down during the pandemic and the lockdowns and stuff. But just even being like, I just kind of knew like mountains are where I need to be. Like I need to be
Mhm.
near mountains. There's something with mountains that is like calling out to me. And now I live on the Front Range, which I didn't know this is like number one or number two, like lightning strikes in the whole of US.
No way.
So I have like crazy thunderstorms, which are like my favorite personally. And, but
Speaking
I,
of all of these things,
yeah,
I had the same experience with mountains. I tell you, I was like, I'm moving to the mountains after this. I don't care how I do it. I'm doing it. And the other day, we had one of the biggest lightning storms that I'd seen in a long time. And I was standing outside because I love it. It was beautiful. It was like daylight every time the lightning struck. I was like, oh my God. The
it's the
simulation.
best.
Yeah.
Everyone always says, don't go outside. I'm always outside.
Same. Well, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen anyway.
Yeah, it's like that's what my soul chose. I mean, then cool. What a cool way to go out.
Well, I think in worse ways, that's for sure.
There's worse ways, like than, literally being struck by lightning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like all through college, I'll still get DMs or texts from college friends or roommates that knew like I was always out and breaking curfew technically because it was a Christian university and we weren't allowed to be outside, not even like outside your front door, which I think is a little too much, but I would be sitting on top of the hood of my car and in a lightning storm and just like loving life. And they're like, that's like literally the worst place you could be. It's on top
Probably.
of a metal a metal thing, but
I
it
suppose you've
was
got the right tires, maybe that would help. I don't know.
who knows. But I was like, God loves me. I'm not gonna get struck by lightning. Like I'm good, you know? That was my
Oh, I
excuse.
am God.
I am
Yeah.
God. Therefore, I make this happen. This is all me. You're welcome.
Exactly. You're welcome.
But I love that you also have that same, like, kind of feeling for the mountains. I can't explain it. I don't know if it's because there's something, I don't know, big, expansive. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
because there's the height factor, like you get up high and you just feel closer to God or out of the radio waves and like the radio towers and all of
That's a
that.
big thing. They have such a presence for me. The mountains, I don't know. They're
Yes.
just like this awe, you know? Every
Mm-hmm.
time I see them, I'm just like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
this is, I mean, we're just so small. We're so small, you know, and they're just such a huge presence and they've just got this feeling. I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint. There's got to be something. Maybe it was a past thing, incarnation, or perhaps
Yeah.
there's something to do. There's something about mountains that we don't know yet. Who knows?
Who knows? I've even heard like mountains are like the big ones are just like I don't know, they used to be like ancient temples, castles, whatever you want to call it. I've heard that theory too. But I don't know if they just maybe just energetically there's a lot of energy channeled within that space to create
Yeah.
such a height and all of that. Who knows? But energetically, I know and I want to hear your opinion on this. When I moved here, I was told that there's portals, like energetic pockets that are more magnified, that kind of thing. I don't know if there's any in New Zealand or if you would consider just the whole island a portal, but but I didn't know what your thoughts were on that, and I wanted to kind of pick your brain. Like, what do you think about that? That are there truly energetic pockets? Are they places where we should live? Why is not, you know, why is there not like just everything is an energetic pocket? Why are there
That's
pockets?
that's what I would say. I would say everywhere is an energetic thing because it's all within us anyway, right? I mean, that's not to say that I think they call them meridian lines or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of them. I think there is one in New Zealand. I've never been. I know a lot of people do work with them and stuff, and I'm a real believer of because like the way I look at our minds is it's like a what am I trying to say? It's like a magnifying glass. So like source energy or whatever it does comes through this channel and it sort of goes through our minds. So this our minds is like a it's like a middleman, right? So as long as someone believes that those pockets are helping, that's all that matters.
I
So
love
if
that.
someone if someone asks me, "Oh, what do you think about this?" I'm never going to say, "Oh, it's crap." Oh, because that's just completely removed any connection to source that someone might have had. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, whatever it takes, whatever you like, if the mind believes it to be true, then there's a power, placebo, right? It's a scientific thing as well. It's just so, it's like it's overlooked this magical power that we have. Oh, that's just placebo. Excuse me? Do you know what placebo actually is? Ah,
It's
I just
actually
be,
really insane.
oh, it's insane.
Yeah.
And the nocebo as well. The opposite of that is just as powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beliefs. If you believe something, it's going to manifest in your reality in different ways.
Yes. And I love that answer. I totally was suspecting that that's exactly what you would say just because we've been talking for a bit. But I think it's really interesting, like just the spiritual community, because I talk with like a bunch of different people. I've even hung out with people here and we're doing like number codes and sequences and stuff like that and speaking them, into existence. And the whole time I'm thinking, you know, why do I need to be doing this? Like, I don't need to be saying like a sequence of numbers in order to be protected from evil, or like for me, I've always kind of thought if I believe I'm protected and if I put that intention out that I'm not, going to be absorbing any negativity, then I believe that I am, and I that's my experience. So, but I think it's funny because in the spiritual community, right, Josh, like you probably get this all the time where people kind of get caught up in something, they get caught up in stuff, like all these different things. And so like we're influenced by portals, we're influenced by aliens, UFOs, we're influenced by all these different things, and working with them and thinking like, so therefore I'm there's something outside of me that is empowering me to be more.
Exactly.
And I
Yeah.
think I have a problem with that ultimately. Like I agree with you on beliefs and what you believe, that probably is helping you in some level. But I think we can also get so caught up in what we believe that we can lose like sense of reality or groundedness. You know what I mean? Like we're so kind of
Yeah.
like up here. But I like don't like discrediting people that are just kind of like woo woo, because there is truth to it. There's value to it, to their experience particularly. But I
It
don't
is
know.
very hard. It is very hard because I've experienced all of these things that you're talking about, and
Right.
so I still experience them. But with the thing with the light over the lake, right? Oh, it's aliens. Who's saying that? Who's saying it's aliens? Right? Is it your ego or is it not?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be the only question. That's what I ask myself. Like if I go, oh, like, oh, I'm just staring up at the sun, I'm waiting for aliens just to come down and beam me up and just show me everything's going to be okay. It's like, well, who's actually wanting that? Who thinks that's true? Is it your ego or is it your inner being?
Mm-hmm.
And when we do those things, we're taking ourselves out of the present moment, right? We're missing the point because all of those things that we're hoping to happen or hoping that the stuff is true,
Yep.
all it's really ultimately to do is to point you back to the fact that you are missing the point and realize that. Because as soon
Mm-hmm.
as you realize you're missing the point, it's like, oh, well, none of that stuff actually mattered the whole time, but it can help people as well. So it's a very balancing act,
It
it's
is.
hard. It is hard. And I agree with what you're saying
It's so
because
hard. Like I had this lady pull out all these, she called them essences, and they were just like little tiny vials of different like perfumes and oils and stuff. And she's like, this is Archangel Michael, and this is Archangel, like, whatever. And like all these different angels and their essence, like what they smell like. And so you smell it and you work with that smell. And the whole time I was going like, hmm. I don't know. I don't like who said that's what the angel smells like? How do you know? Like
exactly.
so it was just but it's like this is like literally a thing. Like it's not just like isn't this cool? Like doesn't it smell cool or like doesn't it do something for you or
See,
it was
that's
like
that's
this is a whole thing.
that's the answer to the question. It's the importance that we're placing on this inanimate
Yes.
object.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if the
And
importance is
anything outside ourselves, right? It's
exactly.
really anything.
Oh yes, it's any the ego loves everything. It loves to latch on to things, and the spiritual ego is far more superior. The spiritual ego is a whole another kettle of fish. It can latch onto things that it doesn't need to see. It can
Mhm.
make things up and create
Mhm.
identity out of seemingly thin air.
Mhm. And I've even seen it in church, like, just in religion too. Like the spiritual ego was I now look at it and I can identify it a whole lot easier because I've kind of removed myself from that, but just even like no, this is true and this is fact and if you don't believe it then you're going to
Yeah.
hell, you know? So there's that extreme, but in the spiritual community where kind of like anything goes,
Mm.
it's really been interesting to navigate like and you can't say anything of like I don't know if I believe that that's true or like I can't tell this lady like I don't think that's Archangel Michael's essence. Like, I can't
Imagine
have
if
an opinion, right?
you destroyed a whole day.
Whole day. I would have destroyed the whole get together gathering.
That it would have been an attack on her identity, and it would have been
Exactly.
right?
Yes, that this is like literally what this woman does. And she works with the Pleiadians closely, and they've given her all these different number sequences, and she chants them. And like, and so you need to chant this in order to feel this way, or to be protected, or to have this happen. And it's like, it's really hard when we come from a place of, it's still closed mindedness. Even though it sounds really out there and woo woo, you're still being closed minded and saying, this is it. Like, and
Yes.
there's no other way but this way. That's very similar to like my upbringing of like,
Yeah.
Jesus is the way, the light, all of that.
I
So it's interesting to me with discernment and with spiritual ego, because I could be easily in my ego, and not know it just by judging
yes.
somebody or their experience. You can slip into your ego.
Absolutely. It's always there. It's always there. And it's so cunning, and it's so subtle. It makes it likes to, because it's just the mind activity, right? That's all ego is. It's just the identification with things, judgment, labels, this, that, and the other thing. And it sort of turns itself back in on you and starts judging yourself as well, right? That's when it gets very toxic. But when we realize that our judgments of others or judgments of anything is only a judgment of ourselves, right? People tend to know that conceptually, but when you understand what that actually means, it is a game changer.
Hmm.
Um, with the so let's just we're using this lady as an example a lot with the sense.
She's a great
Um,
example. We can call her
yeah,
Susan.
okay, let's call her Susie. So Susie, I mean, she's got people that she's helping, right? And they're buying into the stuff, which is great. The only thing I would say to anybody would be obviously discernment first and foremost, but also, I mean, if you are following somebody who is, a guide, essentially is what she is, right? She's a guide of some sort.
Hmm.
Now, actions speak louder than words, right? So if I'm looking to a guide, I look at her and I see what she's doing and things. I'm like, okay, so she's teaching me how to get to where she is. Is that where I want to be?
Exactly. Yes.
And if it's not, I would pull the plug immediately.
Hmm.
I would pull the plug immediately. In saying that, also, there might be some things you can learn from her as well. But ultimately, I think that's the way to look at it, right? Is that, okay,
Yeah.
this is the person. She's where she is spiritually. Is that where I want to be? If it is, great, go for it. If it's not, then yeah, maybe look somewhere else.
It's just, does it resonate? Does it pull on something in you to continue on in your journey and discovering new things? I mean, like, I'm always open to that. So I was kind of having fun with it, but then half the time I was thinking, this is really quite interesting. I don't know how to think about this. Or like, how am I going to tell my mom? How do I explain this to my mother? Yeah,
Oh, if it's on Instagram without looking great, no, that's fine.
right.
It's
Yeah. Yeah, but it's just really interesting because it's just different, and it's just, something I haven't ever even thought of.
yeah,
Um and I've like worked with angels as a Christian. I worked with angels all the time. I mean, that was something that we always did. I cast out demons, like I have all those like really interesting experiences that I look back on and I'm like, I don't really quite know how to put this in the spiritual box. Like Law of One would say, it's a negative polarity that also like you can actually create that, you can be the creator of that thing that you are possessed by, and I've thought about that. That's really interesting, and trying to put that into the experience and look at it differently. But I think ultimately, like, this journey, this life is just really about using our discernment, tuning into your intuition, and just navigating our experiences and enjoying your life. Like what you said
absolutely,
earlier, enjoying life. It's really what this life is about, I think, when it comes down to it. So we're meant to
definitely.
enjoy it.
We are meant to enjoy it. That's why we came here. I mean, some of us, perhaps, I mean, at the end of, ultimately, we're all one, right? There is no separation, but we all have a unique expression here.
Hmm.
And each one of our unique expressions that chose to come back, whether you're a wanderer or a star seed, whatever you want to call it, ultimately the same thing. A little bit of differences, but I mean, they're just semantics. But if you have chosen to come here, you didn't come here knowing that you were going to suffer the whole time. You didn't come here because you didn't want to. You didn't come here because you were forced to. We've chosen to come here, and we've come here to enjoy this experience. And if you are like a light worker or a guide or whatever it is, we get that experience from helping others. Because when we see somebody, like one of my favorite experiences is seeing the penny drop for people, when they finally understand, oh my God, it was me the whole time. I can do, it was always me. And I think that anything, going back to what we're talking about before, just quickly, is if any of these spiritual teachings point to something that's outside of you, I would reconsider that path, because it should always be about coming back here. The only reason we are to go out here is like the hero's journey, right? We go out to learn about things and we ultimately come back. Just like have you read The Alchemist? The book The Alchemist? Just like that, right? We go on a journey, we go back, and the whole time the treasure was there.
Yep.
So I think it's important to, and I think those things resonate with us. So when that kind of truth is spoken, it resonates. So that's why that discernment and resonation is so important, because that's speaking to a truth that is already in here.
And I don't know how much you've kind of been contemplating this. I'm sure, like, especially when you're going through everything that you went through back in 2019, oftentimes we end up thinking like, I just want to leave. I just want to escape. Like, I know, like I attempted suicide 3 times in my life, all
I've had
failed.
those thoughts. I've had a lot of that. Yep, I had a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, super depressed. And it just didn't make sense for me why I even tried to commit suicide, was because it just didn't make sense. If I truly believe I'm worth nothing, if I truly believe I add no value, not even to my own self, then why am I here? Why am I existing? It was like, and so like, let's just try this again, And I didn't even believe in reincarnation at that point. I was like, let me just let God like make someone else be good and let me get out of the way, because clearly I'm failing at life. But I wonder, what is your thoughts around, because I've been hearing this from a few people where they're like, I just want to escape. I just want to leave. I just don't want to be here. Like, a lot of people are saying that.
Oh yeah, I've
And
said it.
and I think it's like there's different ways that they mean. Sometimes it means I just don't want to be a part of the matrix.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
sometimes it's also, I don't want to be literally here, and I don't want to incarnate again here. I don't want to do this again. Why did I choose this? Like you said, why did I go through this? Like, why did I choose this life, choose my family, choose who I'm connecting with, all of that. What are your thoughts around that?
I think the biggest disconnection there would be the trust of oneself. Because if you truly trust yourself, you're going to trust that your choice to come here was a good one, right? So if you're not trusting yourself, why would you be like, oh, my higher self chose this? They don't know. I don't trust them either. They've put me down here to suffer, right? Because they don't realize, perhaps as I didn't, and you probably didn't as well, that suffering is all created within the mind, and it's
Yeah,
all
I didn't
linked to
know.
ego. Yeah. So I mean, it is a very common thing for people to say that, I don't want to do this again. Why the hell did I come here? Like, this is
Right.
ridiculous, not incarnating here again. And a lot of people are being very successful at promoting that message as well.
Yes.
But it is a hard one. It would take some contemplation. I don't think I've contemplated it too much, but the first thing that came to me was that trust thing. If you
I think
really
that's
learn
really
to
good.
trust yourself, on a deep level too, just know that. Also trust in the universe, God, whatever it is that you choose to call it. Trust that you're in the right place. Trust it's the right time. Trust everything that you've, I guess it's a form of faith, isn't it? Faith. Trust that everything is happening just the way it should be. It's that
Yeah.
divine clock that's just clicking through in everything. I mean, I can look back at my life and see those things to reinforce the belief or the trust. Some people might not have that luxury.
Yeah.
but there are things there. Once you see them, you can actually see that everything that's happened for a good reason, and it's going to continue that way.
Yeah.
And you just become this, like, almost like a non-doer of life. You just like, it's happening through me, I'm experiencing it, and I'm enjoying the ride.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think there's like that balance too of believing like there's a reason why this is happening to me, but then also the empowerment factor of like, and I can choose to experience something different.
That's
Like,
it. Free will, the
right?
nectar of the
Yeah.
universe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm suffering. I'm depressed. I feel alone. I feel like I'm never going to have love in my life or whatever it is that someone would say. You can literally choose your experience. If you want to sit right there and stay there for the next 10, 20, 30 years, like you
Realize
can.
it's a choice.
Yeah. Or you can go and you can do something about it and you can choose differently. And that does mean thoughts, actions, words.
It
So,
does. What does
yeah.
Eckhart Tolle say? He says, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says, if you're in a situation that you do not like, you've got three options. Either you change it, you remove yourself from it, or you change the way you look at it, I believe, is the three that he said.
Yeah.
And I think that's very powerful. I kind of live my life by that, obviously not to the word, but that sort of energy, right? If I
Yeah.
can't change it, then I've got another option. I can get the fuck out of here. And if I
Mm-hmm.
can't do that, then okay, I need to, maybe I still have an option. It's not like I need to do something. Option three that's available to me is I can change the way I look at it, because you've always got that power.
Yeah. You always have the power of your perspective.
That's, yeah, exactly.
That's so good. Um, Gosh, I feel like this has been such an amazing deep conversation and there's been so many like there's been so many different even things that we could go off on, but I want to honor and respect your time too. I think what's really cool about the work that you do, because I do believe it's work that you do. It takes hours to put your content out. You put so much effort and thought and intention, and you can feel that even in some of the funny memes and all of that, which are
Got to
great.
laugh, right? We've got to laugh too.
Yes, you gotta laugh.
So important.
Um, what do you feel is like your greatest life purpose in the content that you produce? Like, what is your end goal?
I want to I've created a place where I can slowly introduce people to the fact that they're not just this story, not just this thing, because I went through that myself so intently, right? And awakening to the fact that they are this higher intelligence which is within them, and it's always been there. It's not something you grow into, it's something that's
Mhm.
always been there. It's a removing of things to uncover this power that's within us. And I know from experience that when you operate from this state, it's like the fourth density, Christ consciousness, these things are all the same. The Buddha, what did Buddha say? It's the end of suffering. That's enlightenment. It's the end of suffering. And I know suffering is mind activity. So I want people to get to a space where they are operating from the space in the present moment as much as they can, and to be able to just disregard the ego, disregard the mind activity, identifications, the need for external stuff, and just really empower the individual. Because once that happens to people, it's like the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
This person becomes a beacon of light. This person becomes a beacon of light. This person becomes a beacon of light. And all of a sudden, the 144,000 or whatever the number is becomes 200 and whatever that is times two. So it's just it's just about
288. Yeah.
that's the one. Yeah, something. Yeah. So that's ultimately. I mean, at the start, I just wanted to spread my message, right? I just wanted to get it out there and just see, and then people started liking stuff. So I was like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, people are thinking the same way. And it's funny because if you look at my Instagram, you can see the progression of me, right?
Mhm.
Because like I've literally been on Instagram for I've been on it for about 2 years, I think it is. The
I was a
majority.
total creep and I was like, "Oh my God, your first post was on my birthday
That's right.
back in
That's right.
2020." And I was like,
That's
"Sorry, I was creeping." I literally
right.
scrolled all the way down.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I like that. And I was like, oh wow, it was too. And that made me realize, wow, it's been that long as well.
Hmm.
I was like, wow, it's been, and that's a majority of my journey is on Instagram for everyone to see. I am, yeah, it's been an experience, but that is ultimately what I want to do, is just empower people to become their higher selves. If I had to say it in one sentence, that would be it.
Yeah.
Empowering people to become their higher selves and potentially showing them ways that can get them there.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, that's such a similar journey to this podcast. People that have been with me since the beginning would know. Like, it's been instrumental in my spiritual growth and in being empowered and all of that, and being a light and finding my purpose, which is that. It's just simply that. So I think that's amazing. And I think that's definitely what you're doing. And people are gravitating to that, and having a good time with your memes. You have amazing GIF and meme game. On point.
It's gonna be on my grave. Josh Davies, the best
Yes.
Jeff meme guy. That's it. That's
So
my
good.
legacy.
I love it. It'll be a huge legacy. I mean, because gosh, by the time you pass, the gift game will be like, who's the reigning champ? Josh Davies.
Yeah, I can handle that.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, Josh. This has been awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you.